I stormed out of the hospital, my breath coming in sharp, shallow bursts. The stares of my ex-colleagues burned into my back as I clutched the crumpled termination letter in my trembling hands. Fired.
Just like that.
Years of dedication, sleepless nights, and putting my patients first meant nothing. "You're done here, Claire," my supervisor, Dr. Monroe, had said coldly. "We can't have insubordination." Insubordination? No, I had called him out for neglecting a critical patient. I had fought for my patient's life, and this was my reward? I was on the street now, the cold night air biting into my skin. I had nowhere to go, no backup plan. The panic bubbled inside me, threatening to take over, but I swallowed it down. I wouldn't break. Not today. I was walking aimlessly through the city when I heard it, a loud thud, followed by a desperate gasp. My instincts kicked in before I even had time to think. A man had collapsed near a dark alley, his body shaking violently. A group of bystanders hesitated, unsure what to do. I sprinted over. "Move. I'm a nurse." Kneeling beside him, I checked his pulse, weak. His breathing was shallow, labored. My hands moved automatically, years of training overriding the storm in my head. He was dying. I tilted his head, opening his airway. "Stay with me," I whispered, pressing on his chest, fighting for his life. Every second felt like an eternity. The ambulance took forever. My heart pounded as I continued CPR, the man's face turning pale. "Not today. Not on my watch. Come on," I begged, adrenaline surging through my veins. "Breathe." Then a miracle. A faint, shuddering breath. His chest rose and fell, weak but steady. I gasped, relief flooding me as I felt his pulse strengthen beneath my fingertips. The sirens blared in the distance. They were finally here. As the paramedics took over, one of them turned to me. "You just saved his life." But I didn't know then just whose life I had saved. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Is this Claire Dawson?" "Yes." "This is Michael Langford." A pause. "You saved my father's life last night." The air left my lungs. "Langford? As in billionaire William Langford?" Before I could respond, he continued, his voice sharp and urgent. "I need to meet you. Today." What was going on? An hour later, I peered out my window, and my jaw hit the floor. 4 luxury cars, sleek, black, expensive, parked in front of my apartment. This had to be a mistake. Then the doors opened. A man in an impeccably tailored suit stepped out, followed by 3 other bodyguards. My pulse quickened as a knock echoed through my tiny apartment. I hesitated. This was crazy.
Who were these people?
Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. Michael Langford's piercing blue eyes locked onto mine. "Miss Dawson," he said smoothly, "we need to talk." And just like that, my ordinary, ruined life took a turn I never saw coming. Michael Langford's gaze was sharp, assessing. He stepped inside before I could invite him, his bodyguards flanking him like shadows. I crossed my arms. What is this about? He studied me for a moment, then pulled out his phone. A video played. It was footage of last night me saving his father. "You didn't just help a man, Miss Dawson," he said. "You saved William Langford's life." My stomach twisted. I wasn't sure what kind of response he wanted. "Okay," I said slowly. "I did what I was trained to do."
He smirked.
"You did what no one else could. That hospital of yours? They left him to die. But you fought for him." His voice hardened. "And then they fired you." My jaw clenched. Michael slid a sleek black folder across my rickety coffee table. "I want to make you an offer." I hesitated, then opened it. My breath caught in my throat.
A check.
A job contract. And a 6-figure salary. "This must be a mistake," I whispered. "It's not." His eyes darkened. "This is my father's personal request. He wants you as his private nurse." I swallowed.
Hard.
My hands trembled as I skimmed through the contract. This was life-changing. After losing everything, being humiliated, thrown out like garbage. Now, Here's an offer that would put me back on my feet.
But why?
I glanced up. Why are you doing this? Michael's expression softened, just a little. Because my father never trusts anyone. But last night, while you were fighting for his life, he heard your voice. He remembers everything. How you didn't give up, how you told him to stay with you. I exhaled shakily. Michael leaned forward. We don't just want to pay you off, Claire. We want you to stay. The air was thick with expectation. I could barely breathe. This was everything I could have ever hoped for. But would taking this job mean stepping into a world I wasn't ready for? The next morning, a limousine picked me up. I sat stiffly in the plush leather seat, gripping my bag like a lifeline as we passed through towering iron gates. The Langford estate was another world. Rolling hills, a mansion larger than a hospital, fountains the size of my entire apartment building. A butler led me inside, and my breath hitched as I stepped into an opulent, sunlit hall. And there, in a grand chair, sat William Langford, the man I had saved, his sharp, silver eyes locked onto mine. You're the one who wouldn't let me die, he said, his voice deep and strong. A slow, almost dangerous smile stretched across his face. I think I'm going to like you. It became clear within hours. This wasn't just a job. William Langford was a ruthless businessman, but around me, he was different. You're not like the others, he muttered one day, watching me check his vitals. Because I don't kiss up to you? I teased. His chest rumbled with laughter. His staff whispered about it, about how the billionaire, who trusted, no one actually listened to me. But not everyone was pleased. Someone in this house wanted me gone. It started subtly. A misplaced medication. A missed appointment I never received notice for. And then, a note slipped under my door. Leave while you still can. My stomach dropped. Someone was watching me. Someone wanted me out. And I had a feeling that if I didn't figure out who, I wouldn't just lose my job this time. I'd lose something far, far worse. My pulse thundered in my ears as I stared at the note in my trembling hands. Leave while you still can. A lump formed in my throat. This wasn't paranoia. Someone in this house wanted me gone.
But why?
I had just started this job. I hadn't wronged anyone, except maybe the hospital that fired me. I carefully folded the note, slipping it into my pocket. If someone thought they could scare me off that easily, they had no idea who they were dealing with. But I had to be smart, careful, because I was playing in a world of power now, a world where people like me didn't usually get second chances. And if I made one wrong move, I might not get a third. I started noticing small things. The way certain staff members averted their gazes when I entered a room. The whispers that stopped abruptly as I passed. And the eyes. Always watching. One night, as I was heading to my room, I saw a shadow shift at the end of the hallway. My stomach clenched. I spun around. Who's there? Silence. Then a soft creak. A door clicking shut. I exhaled sharply. I wasn't imagining this. Someone didn't want me here. But I wasn't leaving. Not until I figured out why. The next morning, I found William Langford sitting by the massive bay window, his sharp eyes scanning the estate grounds. You look tired, he murmured. I hesitated. Should I tell him? Instead, I forced a smile, just adjusting. His gaze sharpened. You're not a liar, Claire. I respect that. But I also know when someone's keeping things from me. I swallowed. This man saw through everything. Before I could speak, he leaned forward. There are people here who don't like outsiders. His words sent a chill down my spine. Be careful, he said softly. They won't play fair. I clenched my hands. Neither will I. It started small. Misplaced medications. Charts tampered with. Then one afternoon, I found William's oxygen tank valve loosened. My breath caught. This wasn't a mistake. Someone was trying to kill him. I tightened the valve, my hands shaking. Who would do this?
And why?
Michael Langford stormed in seconds later, his face like a thundercloud. Something's wrong, isn't it? I hesitated. Then I nodded. His jaw clenched. I knew it. Someone in this house wants him dead. And now I was in the crosshairs too. Michael didn't waste time. He summoned the entire household staff that evening, standing at the head of the dining hall like a king in his castle. "Someone here," he said, voice low and deadly, "is playing a dangerous game." Tension crackled in the air. William, seated beside me, was silent, his gaze unreadable. Michael's voice hardened. "I want the truth."
Now.
No one spoke. But across the room, a woman shifted uncomfortably. I recognized her. Lydia, one of the senior nurses. She wasn't meeting anyone's eyes. And suddenly I knew. "Lydia," I said softly, standing. Her head snapped up, eyes wide with panic. I don't know what you're talking about." Michael took a slow, menacing step toward her. "Don't you?" The silence stretched. Then she cracked. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," she burst out. Gasps rippled through the room. "Then what did you mean?" I asked, voice steady. Tears welled in her eyes. "They paid me to get you fired. To get you out of here." I stiffened.
They?
She swallowed. "Someone powerful. Someone who doesn't want you near the Langfords." A sick feeling curled in my stomach. This wasn't just a jealous coworker. This was bigger. Much, much bigger. Lydia was trembling now. I can't say his name. If I do." Michael's voice turned sharp. "If you do, what?" Her lips trembled. Then in a whisper she choked out, "Dr. Monroe." My blood ran cold. The man who fired me. The man I exposed for neglecting patients. He hadn't just ruined my career. He was trying to ruin my life. Michael's expression darkened. "That son of a—" William held up a hand. "Careful." His eyes met mine. "Claire, you should leave this alone." I shook my head.
No.
Not this time. If Dr. Monroe thought he could destroy me, he was in for a surprise. I wasn't just some helpless nurse anymore. I had the Langfords on my side. And I was about to turn the game on him. Michael had resources, more than I could ever imagine. Within hours, we had proof. Wire transfers from Dr. Monroe to Lydia. Secret correspondences about removing Claire Dawson permanently. I stared at the evidence, my heart hammering. "He tried to have me blacklisted," I whispered. Michael exhaled sharply. "He did more than that. He slid another document toward me. My hospital records. They were forged. Dr. Monroe had lied about my credentials. If we hadn't found this, I would have never been able to work as a nurse again." I clenched my fists. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice. We didn't just expose Dr. Monroe. We destroyed him. The next morning, headlines exploded. Prominent hospital director exposed for fraud, negligence, and corruption. Dr. Monroe caught in scandal. Multiple lawsuits pending. And at the center of it all?
Me.
The hospital issued a formal apology. Dr. Monroe was finished. And I wasn't just a nurse anymore. I was the woman who brought a giant to his knees. William Langford smiled at me as I stood beside him in his study. "You didn't just save my life, Claire," he said. "You changed it." Michael grinned. "So, what do you want next?" I took a deep breath. I didn't have an answer yet. But for the first time in my life, I had choices. And I was ready for whatever came next.